we don't need to be extreme. In fact, extreme is so confining. And the things that are the most rigid are also the things that are the most susceptible to sort of complete collapse in a lot of cases. Building in some flexibility can actually be a way to make it sustainable over time. So good enough isn't necessarily less than a perfect plan. It depends on if you're going for perfection in the short term or if you're going for sustainable health in the long term.
Welcome to the Healthy Love and Money podcast. If you find money to be the number 1, 2, or even third largest source of stress in your relationship, then you're in the right place. Going beyond how to budget, invest, and do your taxes, we're going to explore financial intimacy. Discover how to talk with your partner about your shared financial life. Let's take the awkward and painful out of money conversations. Join me and hit follow to listen to weekly inspiring, healing, and motivating interviews with financial therapists, couples therapists, and financial planners, and so many more. Let's go on the journey of financial intimacy together. Hi, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Healthy Love and Money podcast. Today, I have a very special honor. I'm welcoming Dr. Christine Hargrove, one of the newest team members to Healthy Love and Money. She's an incredible person. I've enjoyed working with her for many years now. And now that she's on Team Healthy Love and Money, I'm even more excited to have her talk about her amazing work with neurodiverse and ADHD people and couples. Dr. Hargrove, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
It feels so fun to say Dr. Hargrove. This is go ahead, go say it.
It will never get old. It will never get old. I think that's like getting your doctorate as a second career and putting in the work with your family beside you. It carries another level of meaning every time I hear that. So it will always cheer me up to be called Dr. Hargrove. You don't have to, but I love it.
Well, listeners, this is what's so exciting is the field of financial therapy and financial planning are rapidly evolving because of wonderful people like Christine, Dr. Hargrove, who is a major career changer, and she'll talk some about that today and how that shapes her view of working with people in financial therapy. So let's take listeners back a little bit. Life before being Dr. Hargrove. What's been your career journey just at the highest level to get to this point where now you're helping people with their money?
Yeah, well, it's been a lot of different things. So I went through undergrad, did religious studies, started out as a Spanish major, got all the classes, and still had some room in my curriculum. So I switched to religious studies, finished it out, went and got an MDiv, but I didn't want to go into ministry. I didn't feel like that was a calling. I certainly have always been someone who loves to help, and I actually loved the family therapy course that I had to take in my MDiv. So I finished that up, and I had student loans that I had to start paying off. And so I kind of pivoted a little bit. I still did a lot of stuff with words and did stuff with people. So I shifted into sales and marketing for a corporation and ended up doing a lot of marketing. And then when I had my first child, decided to stay home and freelance. So I did web design, marketing, graphic design for about 12 years. We moved a lot for my husband's job and had some more children along the way. And so really in there, I knew for a very long time that I wanted to go back and do family therapy, couple therapy, but I did not want to go back and take on more student loans. And I also wanted to try to time it so that my kids would be old enough that I could more comfortably leave them in a care setting and not be trying to navigate maternity leave and all that kind of stuff. So when it was a good time for us, I went back and I applied for a second master's degree. And, honestly, by that point we knew, so 2 of my kids have ADHD, and we didn't know about the second one, but we knew about the first one. And so I had already been sort of doing our own version of kind of family therapy, like really learning as much as I could about what it meant to be a family living with neurodiversity and what I needed to do differently and what we need to do differently as parents and as a family to be able to have a happy life together, have really, solid relationships with one another. So when I went back and got my second master's degree, I knew by that point I really wanted to focus on supporting individuals, couples, and families with neurodiversity.
Mm-hmm.
Along the way, one of my other kids got diagnosed. And then in order for me to really specialize, it is actually really hard to specialize in neurodiversity. As a therapist, there aren't a lot of clear paths for like, here's how I'm going to go for this. So I decided to get a doctorate at a program that was very open and to really integrating neurodiversity in all of my research, all my courses, all my clinical work. So I moved across the country so that I could do a doctorate at the University of Georgia. And I finished that up and I did my clinical internship, everything really focused on couples and families and individuals with ADHD and other forms of neurodiversity. And then while I was there, I got introduced to financial therapy. Yeah. And like immediately, it was a wonderful fit. As someone who has been in large corporations, small business, entrepreneur, I've been at all different levels. I know firsthand, how important money is. I know what financial stress feels like. And, having been in other roles where I had to be comfortable talking about money and working through money, this felt, I wasn't intimidated by the idea of talking about money with my clients. And I knew that that's usually something we kind of avoid, except for clients are really stressed out about it and couples fight about it a lot. Yeah. And so I was very excited about the idea when I was asked to learn financial therapy and get supervised by some of the faculty at UGA who were amazing. So I did that for the last 4 years as well. And found that I loved it. And of course, it's a bit of a no-brainer now, but at the time, I felt like I do ADHD and neurodiversity and I do financial therapy. Man, I only had to do financial therapy for like a month or two, really deep dive. And I worked with clients and I was like, oh man, there is a union here of the needs of the neurodiverse community and the sources of help and support that financial therapy can provide. So I actually did my dissertation I included financial self-efficacy, well-being, and then couple relationships and ADHD symptoms. So I put all three of them in my dissertation and it was great.
Wow. So listeners, I hope that you're feeling inspired and encouraged and like, wow, I want to know Christine. But you might also be feeling a little overwhelmed and that's perfectly okay.
Yep. I just gave like a summary of a decade and a half or more of a lot of big decisions and a lot of change.
So. Yeah. And that's right. That's really kind of the goal of this interview is, Christine, I think the work that you're doing is incredible. It's beautiful. It's thoughtful. And most importantly, it's helpful for folks. And I think, to me, the best financial therapists are the people that didn't necessarily start as therapists, but had to live through a lot of different life positions because most of the clients that are coming to us are not therapists. They're not trained as therapists. They see the world through different lenses, and having lived and worked in different cultures, work cultures, money mindsets, it's easier to see the different positions people can take around money. Is that kind of your perspective on things?
Yeah, I think that a lot of people, when they begin, whether it's sort of, a stereotypical therapy process or especially a financial therapy process, they're not really sure of, can this person who is sitting across from me, number one, can I really tell them and have them not judge me, right? Like, can I tell them the truth and like not be like waiting for that moment where you see that little side eye, right? Of like them thinking like, oh, you shouldn't have done that. Like, do they have the empathy or do they have to, are they going to kind of play the role of the therapist or like, are they really going to feel me? Are they really with me here? Do they get it? And I think that's where there are a lot of therapists that do a wonderful job of that and maybe are younger or, different reasons why they may not have had the exact same life experiences. But I do think that when you've had some opportunities to learn under your belt, I don't want to call them mistakes and failures, but, like some lessons I have learned the hard way. And I don't think that I started out particularly assuming that everybody had to do things just one way. But I would say that over time, all of the different experiences, we've moved a lot. We've had a lot of life changes and a lot of life experiences. And it's really shown me that there are so many different ways to end up in a really happy and satisfying place. Like your life doesn't have to be cookie cutter in order to be good.
Oh, so I do want to pick up on that thread, but I want to go back because I was about to jump out of my seat in a good way and like almost give you a hug, Christine, as you were describing this, like what I would call monitoring how will the therapist respond to my money stuff. Right?
Yeah,
because like one of the reasons that I've tried to become as great of a financial therapist as possible is every freaking time I try to start talking about my money life with my therapist or therapist over the years, like at some point it's made them uncomfortable. And they weren't even aware that it made them uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. And, because this is not a place that therapists get training on how to be comfortable or be fully aware of. And they may have some of their own gaps in how they think they're responding and how they're actually responding, because therapists have their own fears and anxieties and places of shame around money. And so, that hypervigilance that I think we bring as humans to knowing people are judgmental as hell, excuse my language, about what we do or don't do with our money. Like, I mean, if you want to feel shame, like, let's talk about what we've done with money. And man, it's not going to take long for someone to give you the side eye or the gasp or the wagging the finger, you stupid son of a, whatever.
Well, I think it can go, what makes it even more intimidating to try to talk about money is that you don't know really what direction it'll go. Because with some people, you can talk about, spending money and they're excited about it and other people will judge it. And then you can also talk about being frugal and get the side eye that way from people who, don't approve of that. So like, there's no scripted way to be approved of when you talk about money. You just have to be yourself and like, see, like, is this person a friend or is this person with friends like these? Like, yeah, you just don't know.
Well, and I think this is something for listeners to really try to hear and understand. And it's something I continue to try to work out for myself is in the role of financial therapist, there's really kind of a relative neutrality. And what I want to say is, it's not that you don't stand in the position of, I want to help you move towards financial well-being. And we have some ideas about what financial well-being looks like and good healthy financial practices. But I think there's hopefully a lot more spirit of like flexibility around that vis-a-vis like a financial planner or a financial influencer or a financial journalist who takes very strong positions and say, this is how you have to invest your money to be successful. This is how you have to budget to be successful. Have to, should. There is no other way. This is the 5-step, whatever. What a contrasting experience that can be to sit with two different types of professionals around your money. Curious about your thoughts.
Yeah, I think, when I think about not just the financial influencers, but sometimes different financial professionals who might take a really extreme view. Yeah. In some ways, on the influencer side, it is a way to have attention. Yeah. And, attention is money. And then there's also sometimes like a desire that we have to feel like we've done it right, yes. To feel like there's a check mark that, it's like a light switch. It's either on or off and there's no dimmer switch. There's just like, it's all on or it's all off. And we kind of have this dichotomous thinking. But in real life, when you're working with a couple, when you're working with an individual, even if you're sitting down, like talking to a group of people, that they're talking about their own lives, they're thinking about their own families. Right. Good enough is good enough. Mm. Like, we don't need to be extreme. In fact, extreme is so confining. And the things that are the most rigid are also the things that are the most susceptible to sort of complete collapse in a lot of cases. Building in some flexibility can actually be a way to make it sustainable over time. So good enough isn't necessarily less than a perfect plan. It depends on if you're going for perfection in the short term or if you're going for sustainable health in the long term.
I am far from an engineer. So any engineers listening, please forgive me. But what I understand about like bridge building is they design the system to actually be flexible. I'm thinking about California. I grew up in California. And part of what they've had to learn is how to design the buildings and the bridges to move some with the environment. And so they look like they're solid, stable, and they are, relatively speaking, but they have some flex built into them. And I think about, there's some of us that can be so rigid in the way we want to design our financial life that there's no flex for when life happens. When we get sick, our partner gets sick, our kid needs something, our house has something happen, or we just have an existential life crisis and we realize this is not who I'm supposed to be. I got to go a different direction, but I'm supposed to be saving $20,000 a year and I'm supposed to be a millionaire by this age and blah, 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 blah.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel called to go be over here. Oh no, what do I do?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Christine, I'm curious, in your journey and learning about financial therapy, how has it changed your own relationship with money?
I think it has, it's really brought my attention to how much meaning we put on money, how much pressure we put on money. Not just that the money should be there, but also, I'll sort of be in some circles, especially in, I've spent a lot of time in academia, and there are some circles where like you want to go get the money, you want to get the grant money, you want, money is freedom. And there are other circles where like money's kind of dirty. Like evil, maybe not fully evil people, but there's a tone to it of this is that we disparage it. And so really catching on to some of those undercurrents, I think it helped me understand a little better the different environments that I was in, because money is in everything, but it is talked about differently in these different places. Definitely, I think when I think about my relationship with money, I really think relationally, like how easy or difficult is it for me to talk with other people about money, for me to be open about, a mistake I've made or a source of pain, something that, bothers me, or I continue to maybe, have a certain, like, I don't want to invest in that, being a little more transparent about it. But being able to be transparent about it without sort of loading the meanings onto it. So, being able to be comfortable with others' meanings of money without taking those on for myself, like accepting we all have these different perspectives and I can hear those and connect.
Yeah.
And I can still have my own view and like live my own life, and that's okay too.
I think that's really huge. And I'm wondering, one of my questions is, do you feel like that's something that you've just become much more conscious about, the fact that you do have this relationship with money and that you have different experiences with money than others, and like that kind of becoming conscious of like, when am I like hearing someone else's view of money and maybe tempted to take that on as if it's my own, but really realizing that's actually not my view of money and it's theirs, and it's okay. It's different, but it's like, I don't have to absorb what that means. And I might be projecting, Christine, because I think that's one of the patterns that I've taken on for so long, is like, well, if you say this is what's right to do with money, then that's what I should be doing with money, even if it doesn't line up with my values.
Oh yeah. My personality, I always want to connect, and so whether there's something that they're saying that I feel like, like that's actually not a good idea, that I can just let go of that. It's okay. But sort of similarly, if there's something that I hold to of like, this is how I'm handling it, and I can tell that the other person has really different views and they're not comfortable with the fact that we're different, I don't really respond by getting defensive as well. I can just be like, just really be okay with it. Yeah. I think there's been we've had so many different financial experiences in our family, and some good and some not good, and a lot of coping and a lot of muddling through. And it's, like, it is what it is. being able to articulate a life in which your finances support the life that you want rather than the other way around, define the life that you're going to have, I think has been another part of it. Being able to, money matters, but here are our values, and here's how we're going to make our decisions in this order, and feel sort of solid on that.
Would you be willing to share like a kind of a before and after, like what that might have looked like in the other way?
Okay, I can give a couple of examples.
Sure. Yeah.
If I think I understand what you're saying. So it was 2007, and I had just left my job and had a baby, and I was on maternity leave, and we had decided, my husband had gotten a job offer across the country, so we were going to move. So we went ahead. My husband didn't want us to be without a home, so we went ahead and put in an offer on the house, the place across the country, went back, put our house on the market, which is like a little starter home outside of Boston. And that week, the bottom fell out of the market. So we owned 2 homes, and we had a baby, and we were suddenly single income.
Okay.
And we could not sell that house. We had to go ahead and move so my husband could take the new job. And we couldn't sell the house. And it was awful. It was absolutely awful. And I think we owned 2 homes for like at least a year and a half.
Okay.
And so all of the, additional salary just went straight to paying for a house that we weren't even there. And we had to move again. And so we got the first home. We had to short sell it, which was very upsetting for us. That was not how we thought we were going to be handling our finances. This is not who we're trying to be. And yet it was just a terrible situation. And then we had to sell that house because we had to move again for another unexpected job change, which also we didn't see coming. And we got that house sold, basically lost realtor's fees. So at least it wasn't that bad. And then we were living in a little apartment by that point, there were 4 of us, and just absolutely scraping because we were trying to pay off the debt and our student debt as fast as we could. So the house debt and the student debt. And I remember taking my kids, my oldest was like maybe 3, something like that. And then like 3-year-old and almost 1-year-old. And I went to some play dates. And at the McDonald's play place, and I think I ordered like one thing off the dollar menu because our finances were so tight. They were down to the penny. And we got it paid back. We got everything paid off. It took a very long time, and it took a ton of emotional energy, a lot of long nights, a lot of hard work for years and years. And at the time, it was something that I both was like, this is what it is. We're doing the best we can. And it felt like there wasn't a way to think about that in a way that made sense, because to sort of integrate that into, because I could feel that this had defined so much of our early parenting years, was just watching every dollar. And our older kids remember that. And our younger kids don't remember it as much. So it's really affected that. But the embarrassment, I guess, I'm not sure if that's the perfect word, because I was also willing to say, like, look, we're trying to pay back all of our debt. And we got caught in the housing crisis, and but we're gonna pay everything off. So I didn't I didn't try to keep major secrets. And yet I also felt like, how is it that we went to school, we followed all the rules, we got the house when we were supposed to get the house. Like, I felt like we had done everything that we were supposed to have done, and it was awful. And was it me? Was I dumb? Was I what did I do wrong? And I just couldn't quite understand what I was feeling. And definitely after, really having learned a lot about financial therapy, financial trauma, started to understand some of my like reactions to the idea of like going house shopping. This is not something that I'm interested in because I associate it with just grief and heartache and embarrassment, like, And I know that that's not the best, that's not the fiscally optimal, like diversified portfolio that includes real estate holdings. But man, I have a strong reaction. And now I feel like I understand why.
I think this is, wow. I really appreciate you opening up and sharing such a personal story, because I think it really can help, hopefully, listeners connect with you and the work, that you can do with them also. But it's, we end up in this work to try to make meaning and sense out of why we're doing what we're doing and responding, because it's like, so I think what I'm hearing you say is like, there may have been times even before you became a financial therapist where either your husband or you or a friend or somebody would say, hey, why don't you guys look at buying another house? And you would just have this visceral, like, nope, not doing that.
Yes.
And it wasn't even fully consciously connected to the pain of the housing crisis that you went through, or maybe it was, but it's like, I don't know why I'm having such a strong reaction. Or what was that like for you? Was it consciously connected, or was it unconsciously? Does that make sense, that question?
Yeah. Well, it's consciously connected now, but I think at the time I felt like I'm sure at some point we'll have to own a house again, but I felt like I felt disconnected from the people who otherwise were my peers, who were looking at this as a way to feel stable. If you own your home, you are stable.
Right.
And my experience was, if you invest your money in a home, like, it's awful. It is a ball and chain that's on fire.
Yes.
So yes. I felt so different about like, how is it that all y'all have had these great experiences and you look like real grown-ups, and like every time I touch this, it has just been painful.
Yeah.
How do you make sense out of that?
Yeah. So Christine, this whole journey of like having a painful experience around housing really shaped your expectations around home ownership differently than your peers. And because of the timing and what happened. So I'm going to make up a completely story, but let's just say you had another friend or friends that are about the same age who bought a house in 2005 and, didn't need to move across the country, didn't buy a second house, rode it through the crash. So maybe they went down a little bit in value from when they bought it even in 2005, but they just stayed with it because they had a job wherever they were. And now it's 2000, let's call it 17. And they're like, oh yeah, that financial crash. They sell their house has gone up in value by 30%, 40%, whatever. They sell it and they're like moving and buying the next house. And they're like, hey, Christine, they catch up with you like, hey, look at this great new house we bought. Christmas card, new house, yay. And you're like, why would you ever do that again? We're the same age. Like, so right? Like, what's the cringe? I'm like, just as
I was thinking before I really, sort of did the work, I would have felt incredibly self-conscious about like, are you judging me? Because, I'll tell you, the minute that like the debt was gone, like we invest in 529s, we're not big spenders. And like, if you come to my house, you will not see beautifully decorated homes. You will not like that. I don't want to invest. I want to invest in like a good life and comfort, but like, it's not particularly, interior design was never my skill. And I'm just not putting money into that. I'm putting money in, where it's going to grow. Because I'm, the back of my mind is thinking like any minute now something will happen and we'll have to give a whole bunch of stuff away again because whatever, because that's happened a few times. But now if I'm around somebody and they're like, oh, I got this new house and I, maybe they're sort of a peer, they're about my age, my response tends to be more like, party at your place. Like, this is great, like, you have the space, and
Yeah.
and I'll bring some food and we'll have a good time. I'm not worried that there's judgment. And, because honestly, I don't think that there was.
Right.
I think that that was self-imposed. I mean, if there were,
Yes.
maybe they just didn't tell me. But I think that that was that self-imposed sense of being very self-conscious of my financial, as though the mistakes that I had made, or maybe choices that ended up just not working out, even if they were like by the book, right? I don't know if you can call that a mistake or not.
Yeah.
But those choices that didn't work out, I wasn't actually wearing them on my sleeve. It wasn't like on my t-shirt saying,
Yeah.
like, look what happened to
Yes.
us.
Right.
It was, I don't actually think that other people think that that's as big a part of our identity as we think it is. But when you've got that pain, it feels like it is on display for everybody all the time. And that must be what people are thinking about when they think about you, is like, what a colossal disappointment.
Wow. Listeners, just give me a moment because I'm speechless in a good way. Christine, I think you just really shared something so beautiful for me. I hope for the listeners too, is that like we can become incredibly self-conscious about our financial realities, our financial past, the things that we've done. And just even listening to you today is like, you know what, maybe that wasn't even really actually a financial mistake. It was more like kind of the circumstances, right? Like we had been living in this economic world where buying houses and holding multiple properties wasn't that big of a deal. It's because houses went up and sold within 30 days, 60 days. Okay, so worst case scenario is 2 months. We can figure that out. And then all of a sudden we have this black swan event and no one can sell a house anywhere close to its market value, and it traps. And we personalize that macroeconomic event. No, we have no control over that. But when we have any sense of personal responsibility, we feel like it's our fault. And then the event passes and people are going on with their life, but you're still living with the consequences. And it's like, I don't know what that metaphor is like, everyone can see the big pimple on the tip of my nose, but I can't see it, or like right on the side of my nose. And it's like, and then someone finally says to me, like, oh my God, that's been there this whole time. I don't know if that's the right analogy, but it's just what
Oh, that's
came to my
funny.
mind. And so, I think about like, so we're talking about this at the very individual level, like some of your experiences, but you were not doing this alone. You were in an intimate marriage with your husband. And you just shared something else that was so interesting is your two older kids remember this period of time far more vividly. And you have two younger kids who don't really know about this time and how that's shaping their kind of expectations. Would you be willing to share a little bit more about that?
Oh, yeah. I didn't realize how much of a difference it had made. My oldest, when she's about to go to college, and next year. Yeah, a couple of years ago, I was asking her a little bit more about, what would you think you might be interested in doing? She's a lot of varied interests, and I'm pretty open to lots of different things. That she doesn't have pressure to be any particular thing. So I was just kind of asking, and she said, well, I know one thing. I want to make enough money so that I can buy something at the grocery store, even if it's not on the list. And I did not realize how formative those early years were, but we were that strict. Like, no bubble gum,
Okay.
Nothing. If it is not on the list, it is not happening, because we shopped the sales. I mean, it was extremely tight. And I'm sure that some of that we could have, taken longer and gotten out of debt a little later. And, I didn't realize at the time how much that was rippling out. I was trying to do the best I could to salvage the situation that felt like it had gone completely out of control overnight.
Right.
But that really affected her. Now she says, like, I'm not mad about it. She gets a little mad when, like, her little sister gets bubble gum just because she's good at the store or something. She's like, I never got bubble gum.
Oh, yes.
But she's not, I mean, she's just a little cranky, but it's more that she she's intentional about wanting to set her life up so that she can find something that she enjoys doing with her time, but she doesn't ever want to have to be that strict with money to that degree.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't want to be that strict with money to that degree again. It was not pleasant.
Right.
But you know, when you're so stressed out about money, and we felt like we were trying to protect the kids, we honestly did. Like we didn't like sit down and tell them how, you know, how stressful. We tried. We thought we were doing a good job, but even the behaviors of how hard it is to be running, you know, barely in the black, if at all, like just barely month by month, that experience ripples out into the family and sort of goes down into the generations. And what I appreciate about, I appreciate a lot about financial therapy, but on a personal level, it has really given me language, and us language to talk with our kids about, hey, we actually think we need to be more transparent with you about what was going on when you saw the effects of it, but you didn't really know why.
Yeah.
So let's just tell you what happened and how we dealt with it, and that our goal was that it wouldn't be forever. And it wasn't forever, but I think for the kids, like when you're little, it does feel like forever. So they thought like,
yes,
this is permanent.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. I think that's such an important lens, right? Is that developmental age and the experience of time, right? And the kids are like, I've got the first grader and second grader, and they're like still figuring out like what day of the week is it, and how long is a month, and how far.
I'm still figuring that out.
Right. And so, you know, but it's like that sense of time as a child time just feels like it goes on forever. And I think sometimes as adults we can feel that, but it's like, man, a year or 2 years just clicking them off. You know, as mom and dad are trying to pay down the debt and do all the other things, and they're aware of the bigger story, but that's the other thing is like kids can't understand the bigger story always. But man, they can pick up on the behaviors and the emotions of mom and dad like ninjas. I mean, they just, you know, and whether their interpretation is right or wrong, that's not the point. It's their interpretation of what's going on. And so what I hear you describing is really this kind of allowing space for breath and correction, allowing the story to evolve or become more thick.
Yeah. And allowing for that richness of the story. You know, and if you kind of gets back to what I was, you know, trying to make sense of this at the beginning, was like, if you don't feel like you coherently understand your own money story, it's incredibly difficult to, even if you want to be transparent in a healthy way with another person.
Oh my gosh. I don't know. This just really opened up. Listeners, just bear with me, but like narrative coherence and story is so foundational to psychological well-being. And when we have traumatic experiences and when we don't have people that we can talk through to make sense out of or make meaning out of it, it just stays this kind of jumbled mess in our brains, right? Like at least my understanding of our brains is part of the job of the brain is to process and organize information to make meaning. But in the absence of having someone to help you do that, you can't do it on your own always. And so kind of the role of the financial therapist is to help you work through your money story and to make meaning and to make sense, or to allow the meaning and sense to evolve some to where maybe it was, you know, God, mom would never let me have gum in the store. I mean, how many listeners out there could raise their hand and say, yeah, my parents never let me have gum in the store because it was, you know, too expensive or was off the list. I'm sure like half the audience are lifting their hand right now. Or, you know, fill in the like sneakers. Well, they only let me get the cheapest sneakers, or whatever that thing is, because the parents are in control of the money while we're children. And they have their reasons, but usually the reasons the parents give have some negative emotional connotation, sometimes some behavioral patterns that are not so nice, maybe a tap on the hands. And so we carry all of that forward with us. And man, it can really show up in the, like your daughter saying, I just want to make enough money so I don't have to worry about that. But then we get on this treadmill of like just trying to make more and more money so we don't have to worry about it. without realizing the root cause, the root story. So, Christine, I appreciate you opening up so much of your very personal family story. And that's, to me, what qualifies people to do financial therapy. I mean, it's the education, obviously, very important. Working on your own lived experience, another huge piece. But it's working with lots of other clients, right? It's like these three big buckets: knowledge and education, your own work, and then working with others. That really makes a great financial therapist. And you've worked with so many couples. And so when you think about working with couples and money, what's one of the biggest places you see couples getting hung up? And how do you like to help them through that?
It is hard to choose just one. Maybe I could choose a couple.
Okay, I won't force you into one. Listeners, Christine, give us your top 20. It's okay.
Yeah, I'll try not to do my top 20. I think that I see a lot of couples have very different meanings of money, and it's very, it's invisible to them. And so money sort of represents, so for example, money represents security and safety to one partner. I've seen this a lot. And money represents freedom to the other. And so once we can get an idea of, it's not just that there's a right way and a wrong way to exist with money, in which case in a couple you usually have like two right ways and two wrong ways, and they're not the same way. They're usually the opposite. They never match. So and each person has this assumption of like, this is what it is.
Right, because that first assumption is there's a right way and a wrong way to do money. Oh, and by the way, it just happens to be my way. Sorry, sucker.
Yeah. Yeah. Or in some cases it's the right way is whatever my parents said, even if that's not what I do. Right. We follow the old rules. So I hear that. So the different meanings of money. And so it is wonderful for a couple when we can work through and identify, like, so what's going on with how we're even thinking and feeling about money. What is this for you? What need does this serve? Because once we get that and we can kind of decenter this idea of one way being, or one meaning of money being the right thing, like money is security or money is freedom, then we can say, okay, so we each have our own preferences for what money means. So what are ways that we can approach money, which is a little more neutral, and make sure that there is some freedom and some security. And so that unspoken and usually like unrecognized meanings of money is something that I see over and over and over again. And it's usually a wonderful set of conversations. It really makes such a difference for couples in their increasing their willingness to find a way forward that works for both of them, because both of them feel respected in the way that I like to do it with couples. So that's the first one, is the sort of the hidden meanings of money.
So I just want to invite you over to talk to my wife and I. Through this one, like, this is the thing. This is the itch I've been waiting for someone to scratch for so freaking long. Because like the meaning of money is foundationally different for couples, and you use this great word, unrecognized. Like it's, and like listeners, it's okay. Like we can't even see this stuff sometimes until like a professional comes and holds up the mirror. And like even Christine, like I do this work day in and day out, and there's something about in the way that you're talking about it today is like, oh, it sinks in deeper for me for myself and my wife. So okay, so the unrecognized meaning of money is probably one of the top ones, and just helping them see that and name it is a huge intervention, a huge step forward for couples.
Right. Okay? So the other one that I see a lot, and I think in particular because I specialize in neurodiversity, is, and this with individuals as well, like the gap between what you mean to do with your money and what actually happens.
Lay it out. Go ahead and lay it out, Dr. Hargrove. Let's lay this out right here. Put it on the table for everyone to see.
We don't have a way to talk about that except for, well, I guess you didn't mean it when you made these big plans. You must have you're just being selfish. Like this is like, we don't even know how to process the fact that we set up these plans or we had these great intentions and then they didn't happen. So what, that is this huge gap. And especially within a couple, right?
Right.
It can be so incredibly difficult. And a lot of times what we do is we're like, okay, well, the next time out, I'm going to make even more stringent aspirational plans and then get even more upset when they don't work out because that's going to work well. But we do. Like, I've done that. But that's a normal. So this gap between intentions and actual repeated, sustained financial behavior is huge. And then there's also like the component of like, not only why is this happening? How are we going to talk about it? Are we going to use negative language? Are we going to use positive language? Like, what in the world do you do to do something different? And a lot of people are just at loose ends. I mean, I do this stuff all the time. So I'm like, oh, we got this, we got this, we got this. Like, I'm going to bring in this tool. Like, that's where I love to get to work. But most people, it feels maybe like you've just been like airdropped into this foreign country and you're like, I want to get along with everyone here. I want to connect. I maybe need to find my way home. I need to know where the bathroom is. Like, I want to be integrated here. I don't speak the language. I don't know my way around. I'm doing sign language. I'm pretty sure this isn't a bathroom. So now I've really got some urgency, like you just feel out of place. And like, I don't see a translator. I don't know what tools I have. No one is here who speaks my language. So I'm just going to muddle through and either try to just get out or try to pretend and blend in and hope nobody notices that I have no idea what I'm like. Everybody is just in this. And so, being in that guiding role of understanding, like, I get it. I get the neurodiversity. I understand this. Right. And if it's different for every person, but still, like in my research and my clinical work and my clinical specializations in my personal life, like, I've got some pretty clear ways that I analyze and work with people for understanding what the barriers are. And I also know like the lay of the land. Yeah. And so I love to be in that role of not just like pretending that the intention behavior gap, not trying to downplay that that's a problem or not trying to just make it a positive thing that the couple can bond over. But like, I bet y'all really want to have something be different next time. Of course you do. And you need the tools. You need to understand what you're going through. And then you need to match the tools with the invisible barriers that you face. And that's what I can do, is help them figure that out and support them as they get used to recognizing those barriers and strategizing and shifting their financial behavior to work around them.
Man, I'm ready to sign up and work with you. This is really the way you framed it is something I work with and see so often with my clients. I see it in my own life, that intention, behavior, the gap. You didn't say this, but I think it's embedded in there is expectations that we set for ourselves and with our partners. So we communicate, hey, honey, I'm going to do this career change, or I'm going to start this business. This is how much money it's going to make in the first year, the second year, and then reality hits. Right. And so
there's so much.
Right. And like now, like I got to deal with my own missed expectations, your missed expectations, like the behaviors like, wait, but you said you're trying to grow the business, but I see you spending time doing this thing over here that doesn't seem related with that. Right. And so it can show up in so many places. And I think people can feel such shame when there's incongruency or they're doing things that are inconsistent with what they said they want to do. But we're complicated and layered individuals. So, yeah.
I think that I hear this a lot in many circles. I especially hear it in financial conversations, and I especially hear it in couple financial conversations. Like I think it's well-meaning. I do, but I see it is typical that we see a heavy emphasis on consequences and like accountability.
Oh, yeah.
But that's inverted of the way sustained behavior change actually happens. I think about it like, so ABC model, antecedent, behavioral reinforcement, consequence.
Yes.
Right? So most of the time we approach it like the worst type of retirement savings you could possibly do, which is like nothing in your 20s and 30s and then you do some in your 40s and 50s, and then you try to save 500% of your salary starting at age 57 or something, right? And so we do very little of the antecedent, which is like setting the stage for success. That's the antecedent, right? The behavioral reinforcement, which is the, I think about like 30s and 40s kind of, like that's that time. We tend to do a little, like sometimes we'll be like, yeah, good job. Like, oh, I guess you started caring about it. That's great.
Yeah.
And then we're heavy on the consequences. But just like saving for retirement, the best type of sustained behavior change not only often feels more gentle, it's more effective, is like saving some in your 20s and like let that stuff build. Add in the behavioral reinforcement. And usually by the time you get to the consequences, like you hardly have to do anything at all. So really focus on setting the stage for success and make sure that you are reinforcing the behaviors that you do want to see more of. So what you celebrate, you get more of. What you discount, you get less of. So you're paying a bill on time if that's a pain point for you. If you pay even one bill on time, like no snappy comeback with that. Like, good job.
When I see this, right, I'm thinking about a couple I was working with very recently where it's the wife is continually critical of the things he's not doing, but is unwilling to acknowledge any efforts positive and right, like that solution focused therapy.
It's painful.
Right, it's painful, but I think what I try to remind myself is that's her conditioned response to feeling dissatisfied as part of the distress cycle that they get stuck in. And he doesn't know how to help her unwind that process of being critical of him without becoming very defensive or angry, understandably. And so, but it's like recognizing, like, can we help partners see the good intention, the positive antecedent, the thing that led to this before that? Because like, it's also that it's easy to see the behaviors, but it's hard to see the antecedent. What's the intention behind it? And I think that's that other thing is like, we see the behavior and we can assume negative intention or positive intention. If we've had painful things done to us, maybe we're predisposed to assume negative intention. But most of us out there are not intentionally malicious and negative and cruel. And maybe I'm a little optimistic, but anyhow, I obviously could just keep asking and talking about this stuff forever with you. But I think you've really highlighted a couple really key areas, right? First is that, like, what does money mean to each of you? Do you even recognize that it has different meanings? But then there's the second piece of like, what is it? Help me in my learning process. What's the second thing is?
How to understand and close the gap between intentions and financial behavior.
Yeah. So, and this is probably the perfect segue or segment, right? Is I asked Christine for help because I was trying to remember her second point and I couldn't quite remember or get it consolidated. But instead of her getting critical or like, Ed, why didn't you remember my second point? It was just like intention and behavior, offering it. And so I think in that way, having that supportive, facilitated relationship goes a long ways to becoming more confident, more clear on working with your finances. And so listeners, Christine is on the Healthy Love and Money team. If you go to the Healthy Love and Money website, you'll see her about page. You can read a little bit more there. And if you want to schedule time to work with her, check the show notes below. We'll have a link for you there, or just go to the Healthy Love and Money website and we'll make sure that you get connected with her. Christine, any parting pieces of wisdom, guidance, encouragement you'd like to offer?
Oh gosh, I don't know about wisdom. I think that, I'd like to tell couples that if you feel like this is a thing that you can't talk about, or you feel like you're not sure if this is right for you, you can try it. You can have, I tend to be a little more gentle in this. It doesn't have to be on fire for you to pay attention to it. And it doesn't have to be a process that's like incredibly painful. It seems like, just like in couple therapy, a lot of times we're like, man, I wish folks would have, like, if you had come to us like 6 months ago, the process would have been shorter because people put it off until it feels like, oh, well, now I really have to go. And I think if the question is in your mind of like, I wonder if this might be something that, would help us, odds are good that it probably will.
Yeah. And I fully encourage that. Listeners, the research is very clear. The number that comes to my mind is most couples wait 7 years before they get to couples therapy. Can you imagine if you had a broken arm and you waited 7 years to treat it?
Yeah, then you got to re-break it to get it. I'm not going to break people's arms, but but honestly, there's so much financial damage, not just the relational part, but like avoiding dealing with your finances with your partner or on your own. Like the longer you let that stuff go, and you can do a lot of it on your own, but you can, you might not always come to the right, or like a healthy place. Right. So,
Yeah. All right. Well, I know there's more great conversations to come for this podcast. Christine, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Ed.
I invite you now to stop for 5 or 10 minutes and reflect on what you just heard. Maybe even journal about it. Give yourself the time to consider what you just heard and what it means to you. By giving yourself the time to reflect and integrate what you just heard, it will help you along your journey of learning, healing, and growing towards financial intimacy in your life. Please like and follow this podcast and share with someone that would benefit from being on the journey of financial intimacy. Wishing you healthy love and money, Ed.